Hey, how's it going, guys? Welcome to my first impressions of Space Hulk Deathwing. So you're going to have to excuse me, I have a bit of a cold right now, but I really wanted to cover this game because I have been following the development of it for a while, and I was really hoping for a genuinely great, or at least fairly competent, Warhammer 40k first-person shooter, because the last first-person shooter I believe we got in the Warhammer 40k universe was Fire Warrior in 2004 or 5, which was pretty generic at best. So recently Games Workshop, the people that own the company, that own the license, they've been kind of whoring it out to a lot of inexperienced developers and publishers. But recently we got Warhammer Vermintide, which was very good. It was a very good interpretation of the fantasy universe. Even though it was kind of a Left 4 Dead clone, it was still a very fun game at that. It had a lot of unique ideas, and the loot system was pretty interesting, and they still update it, which is nice. It had a very good value attached to it, even though I think that the maps, while good, there weren't very many of them. So now we have Deathwing. So this is by Strumon Studio, the developers behind I, Divine Sirens, which was a bit of a cult RPG shooter hit. It's kind of a weird game. It's really hard to explain. I recommend playing it, though, or at least looking up some trailers online. It's the RPG shooter where you can do literally anything. It's a bunch of genres mixed into one because of how deep the RPG elements are in that game. So, with that said, it looked like Space Hulk Deathwing was going to be a very interesting, complex game, even though it was a first-person shooter. But we do have the publisher Focus Home Interactive, which developed the Technomancer in recent memory, which I was going to review, but I got so bored of it, and I ended up hating it so much that I just couldn't finish it. I just despised it. So let's really quickly gloss over the options menu here before I talk about Deathwing. So, control options, you can rebind them. You can have, like, I guess, mouse. So I guess if you have, like, a bunch of mouse buttons, you can, change it, like, thumb mouse button to, which is kind of cool, to, like, give you another option. Although it would be nice if you had the option to have, like, two keyboard buttons for one command. But that's fine. So one of the problems, though, I have is that you have this menu that you open with the space bar, and the menu feels like it's designed for an analog stick. It's got, like, these 8 directions. It's not very good. It's not like Mass Effect, where you have a free-flowing mouse menu. So, for, like, issuing commands to your squad. So, 2 of the buttons, which are 0 and 9, which are really hard to hit, are not bindable, and these allow you to individually heal your squad mates. You can, of course, do it through the menu with the mouse, but again, that feels awful. So it's one of the big design flaws of this game, where I'll get into this more later, but you're constantly being attacked and rushed, and it's very difficult to issue commands and play the game tactically, like it's sort of suggesting it. It kind of wants to be a tactical shooter, but it also is forcing horde mode elements. So yeah, let's talk about that a little later, because it's a hard pill to swallow. Audio options, separate slider is always nice. Video settings, as we've seen here. One of the bigger problems with this game is the performance, which is crap. Really, really bad. I have everything on medium, some things on high, but I have an R9 390 with a 4790K. This game was running terribly in some areas. Like, I would get below 30 FPS. And switching these around really doesn't do much, which is a shame. Gameplay options, you have 4 difficulty settings right here. Alright, let's get right into it. So we're going to be covering the single player, because I assume that's what a lot of people are going to be finding it for. You have multiplayer options, which is kind of, it's very similar to single player. It's not like PvP, it's really mostly PvE. Now what's nice is that they do have voice acting in the game, which is cool. For a $40 release, that's, kind of nice. Alright, so we're in Chapter 3, I believe Part 2 of Chapter 3. So I just cleared this area of Xenos. And let's have a look at the map right here. So you have, a big area to explore, right? And that seems really cool. The problem with this is that a lot of these areas have dead ends. And I'm not talking about dead ends with an interesting item or something like that, or some piece of lore. I'm talking about literal dead ends. In the first mission, I hit about 4 or 5 dead ends before I got to the destination. That really discourages exploring. I kind of get that if they want to hide items and make you kind of work for them, but when I'm constantly being attacked by enemies with a poor health system, which, again, we'll talk about later. It discourages me from exploring, right? If I had regenerative health, okay, fine. I don't mind exploring a little too much, even if it is a little bit repetitive, but I decide, you know what? I'm not going to die. I'm not going to waste resources finding stuff or finding dead ends and attempt to find various relics. Medium settings is kind of a blur right now over some of the textures, but it generally looks pretty nice. There's a lot of environmental detail, as you'll see. It's one of the cool things. The environments kind of range from these open areas to these corridors, so there is a little bit of variety in that, but you're mostly going to be on this giant ship, a Space Hulk, and what you're essentially doing here is you're trying to find a Dark Angel ship on the space, so it's, a ship on a ship, and it's from the Heresy times, so I don't know if that's, they haven't explicitly mentioned, like, what it is. I'm not too big into Warhammer, like the books, but I think it's like 39k, I'm not sure. Oh, we have some Xenos. Good job. Okay, let's... Oh. Oh. Okay. Yeah, these are the Gene Stealer Stalkers. There was a cutscene that kind of showed them off. They're these invisible types. So, right now I've hit about... essentially 3 different types of enemies. Ones that charge at you in waves, ones that kind of stalk you and are stealthy, and ones that shoot you. So I'm assuming that there's going to be more later on, and I'm going to be honest, yes, I am very early into the game, but I gotta say right out, get to the point, this game is very repetitive and has a load of bad design decisions. In fact, after I'm done with this video, I'm probably never going to play it again unless some of this stuff gets fixed. But even then, some of the design decisions are fundamentally broken. Like, they just do not make any sense. So, I was talking about the game being kind of a horde mode shooter, but also being a tactical shooter. So, your health is interesting. If you take too much damage for a part of your armor, you can move slower, you can't shoot as well. Very interesting, right? Has a cool little mechanic. But the problem is that you have very limited ways of avoiding damage. Now, for melee units, you can parry right here, you can, stab them, you can step back. That's cool, that's fine, I get that. But it's the shooting enemies and some of these segments that they put in which are bad. Now, if they didn't have too many of them, that'd be fine. But the problem is, some areas, they just swarm you. And I'm not talking about... I get they want to fill you with a sense of overwhelming odds, dread. Like, that's what the 40k universe on the Space Hulk is all about. Just the feel of dread and being overwhelmed and hopelessly outnumbered. But here it's done poorly. So there are areas where I will be swarmed with a bunch of Gene Stealers, which are these melee enemies. Think of them as like the horde zombies from Left 4 Dead. They just come at you in a line, and they're poorly scripted too. So some of the enemies right here, they have rocket launchers, right? So, and some of these projectiles you can kind of avoid, but generally speaking, you're going to be taking a ton of damage and not be able to counter it, really. So, as I was saying, so you have these Gene Stealers that come at you in waves. So, they aren't real. Their AI is pretty scripted and generic. They come out of a vent or from the wall, and they just come at you in this big wave. And they just come. Usually just single file line. Like, it's pretty bad, to be honest with you. Like, pretty freaking terrible how you can just like stand at one point and just shoot them. Now, if you stand at one point for too long and you don't progress, you can eventually get overwhelmed. But one of the problems with the game, again, is the ranged enemies. So you have an issue where, okay, these guys will shoot you. They're highly accurate. So what you want to do is you want to approach them very carefully, very tactically. You might want to pop around a corner and shoot them, which I don't think is how you should be playing a Terminator. I mean, these guys have insane amounts of armor. They're basically walking tanks. But, you pop around a corner, you're carefully taking them out, but all of a sudden you're getting swarmed by melee enemies. And I get that, you don't want to be too slow, you don't want to be too fast, but it's still a problem where your health systems, you have limited amounts of healing. So if you hit space right here, you have various commands you can issue, which, by the way, the squad mates that you have in the game, they're not very interesting. You can kind of select their loadouts, but aside from a different gun, and like one heals, one really shoots, They are very interesting. Oh my god, one of them is dead. That's cool. God, I do not want to die here. The game is actually kind of challenging, but... Well, I should say hard and not really challenging, because again, they just kind of throw stuff at you until you die. There isn't really good enemy placement or anything like that, despite the environments being pretty nice. I'm going to hit 3 and then activate 4 and activate my Sci gate. So what you can do is you can actually warp at any time, just have to wait. Weapon jamming is a thing which is incredibly annoying, but hey, that's how Space Hulk kind of worked. So you can warp out at any time without really any consequences. The only thing is that you can only do this 3 times per mission. And the save system is actually kind of bad. You can't quick save at all, so you might get stuck at a checkpoint where you already used a Sci gate and you lost a lot of health as soon as you stepped out of that Sci gate. And yeah, you can get kind of screwed. So that's a little annoying. But your guys do revive and you do heal up, and you can also rearm yourself. So these are some of the weapons I've unlocked. There's not a lot, unfortunately. We're going to go to the Redemption right now because the Flamer is just completely useless. I mean, it's kind of good against those Stalkers, but it's useless against ranged. Customize the loadout of your squad. Gives you stats. And then you can also, because you're a librarian? You can add these, or you're a psyker. A librarian psyker, I have no idea. Even though it's... I'm not entirely certain, how much of this game is following the specific rule set of the Warhammer universe. It's kind of like the Battlefield 1 argument. Like, yeah, you gotta have some realism in there to have the authentic World War I experience, but you don't want to make it so that you're basically standing in a trench for hours on end and dying from, wet foot. But it's fine. So, you're noticing I'm just kind of moving around, shooting stuff, moving around, shooting. And that's pretty much the whole frickin' game. I'm pretty much just killing waves and waves of enemies moving from location to location. And that would be kind of fine if the health just wasn't so poorly designed. Like, I have to kind of inch my way, killing hundreds and hundreds of enemies over and over again with the same weapons. I'm just not having any fun. It's not like Fear, where, yeah, you do fight a lot of enemies, but you fight, like, small groups of them in carefully positioned areas with great AI. It's just, instead of going for well-designed AI, they just throw everything they have at you. One level in particular, I remember I was getting swarmed with tons of Gene Stealers, and there was just, like, literally 10 guys with guns shooting at me. Now, some things I will give the game credit for. Environments, again, very nice and detailed. If you're playing with headphones, you're in for a treat because the sound design is quite nice. And a lot of the guns have some good kick to them. And the Sci powers are pretty good, as you can see right there. You also have some RPG elements. Your skills, you can get these skills at the end of a match game, whatever. At the end of a chapter, and you can upgrade them. So, some of them aren't very, some of them are kind of underwhelming, like, 10% plus armor. Yeah, whatever. Hacking time reduced by 30%. But hey, Psyker focuses their power to create an Inferno, which is, it's like a board clear. It's actually what I was showing you earlier. I don't have it right now. It's on a 20-second cooldown, but it was that fire thing I showed you. So, in some ways, it's a kind of a cool building point for an amazing game. The problem is, again, it doesn't know whether it's trying to be a horde mode shooter or a tactical shooter. And one of the other problems I have is with the backtracking. It's, like, as you can see, these maps are huge, right? But you're incredibly slow, understandably, because, you're in tank armor. I think I'm going the wrong way here. But it's not very interesting to backtrack in some of these areas. You think of games like Dark Souls where you have shortcuts, or you have altered levels, or you just make it so that you can move a little bit faster when you're backtracking. Just any of these things will alleviate the issue of just running around, hitting the same enemies over and over again as they slowly, slowly deplete your health. And once you get to your objectives, there's not really much to do. Like, it's basically, okay, just destroy something or hold out against a wave of Xenos. There's nothing interesting like in Vermintide, which had you do like little objectives, like moving around, like moving stuff around in order to, I don't know, unlock a gate or blow up a gate or collect some stuff while holding off a bunch of enemies. And the enemy types, again, aren't very interesting. They don't really change things up. Like in Vermintide, you have the tank, which is something you have to constantly run away from and avoid. You have these range units that throw these potions that are like acidic. That damage you as soon as you get hits. It's like an AoE effect. It's like the spitters, I think, from Left 4 Dead. So yeah, while that game, Vermintide, did kind of clone a lot of what Left 4 Dead was doing, it still was a good game. There's nothing really wrong with nicking a couple features or being inspired from another game, but as long as it's good, you know, it's good. It's like, as long as it's competent, it can be a pretty enjoyable game. But I think that's kind of redundant to say that, but here I feel like there's a lack of direction. It feels uninspired in many ways. The only thing this game has going for it is the voice acting, the dialogue, the gunplay, and the environments. But the enemies are just, you know, they just run at you. I honestly had more fun shooting aliens than Aliens Colonial Marines. And I have a lot of problems with that game, Aliens Colonial Marines, but I didn't think it was as bad as people were saying after the patch came out, right? Where's my squad? Yeah, that's another thing. Sometimes the squad AI just derps out and they just stay put. I didn't tell them to stay. Maybe they're fighting off Xenos, I don't know. I just found it always advantageous to just keep running, because if you stay in one place, they will just send hordes of enemies at you. This game's kind of a disgrace to the Emperor. It's got some good moments, but I wouldn't pay $40 for it. It's pretty repetitive. Maybe if you have friends, but Vermintide is a lot better. Yeah, it doesn't have the 40K aesthetic, but you're going to get a lot more out of that game than this, which is a shame, because I really like the gunplay. It's actually kind of good. Like, you know, you fire this thing, it's like bang, bang. But melee combat, unlike Vermintide, just isn't very good. It's just one button and, you know, a parry, and that's it. Anyway, guys, I'll see you next time. Maybe it'll get fixed with some better maps through DLC, hopefully, but I don't know. It just feels like a lack of good direction. I'll see you guys next time. Thank you very much for watching. I'm out.